Okay, the latest episode of Sword Art Online, War for Underworld, was incredibly dark. I dare say it is the darkest episode of the series. There's no contest. And in all honesty, in terms of just, like, how dark it really is comparable with some of the darkest stuff from this year. It's definitely something that I think Sword Art Online has never really tackled before. It is something that really, I think, might have two different reactions. Either A, it's going to have people become very interested because this villain is definitely building up to something terrifying, or the other reaction is people might be turned away just because of what was done within this episode to establish who the villain actually is. So, let's just get right into it. So, we have the main villain, I'm assuming, of this second half of Sword Art Online's story going on in Underworld. You have Gabriel. I believe that is how you pronounce his name. I believe that's his name, Gabriel. Now, the thing about this is the character, when we're introduced to him in the previous episode, the last episode that came out, last weekend, he was a guy that had some stuff off about him, obviously, but he seemed like a very competent leader. He seemed like someone that had a good head on his shoulders. He seemed like someone that wasn't necessarily as psychotic as we saw within this latest episode. So, first impressions of him, he seems like a typical squad leader that's doing a dirty job trying to get things done for, an organization around the world like the NSA, and that's pretty much the entire point, what he was trying to do. But then this episode rolls around, and you find out who he truly is, and you're like, oh my god, okay. So the man, he asked a typical question, where is the soul? Now, that question is a normal question. Like, when you have a typical conversation, you might eventually start to wonder, where do I go after I die? Where is my soul house that is literally my embodiment of myself? Yes, it might be the brain, but where is the things that control this that come to be? Like, when I die, where does my essence go? Stuff like that, basically. It is a common, discussion. A topic that people would have in everyday life. In real life, people would have that type of discussion. I believe it would probably pop up at the very least once in your life. You might have a discussion like this. Even if it isn't an extreme discussion, like in length, you might have some offhanded discussion here and there with a friend or a family member or a random person walking down the street. Whatever the case may be, though, it isn't necessarily uncommon to wonder where the soul is. However, usually when someone wonders this, there is individuals that take it to the extreme. They go an extra mile to really figure out, how does the human body work? Or where is the core essence of humanity? Like, when we die, where does our essence go? And that's the soul. And so Gabriel's introduction, when you see him messing with, insects and stuff, it's automatically giving off vibes of a psychopath, a serial killer, because he started messing with a praying mantis's head and started kind of looking like he was going to squish the head just to see the reaction from the creature, the bug. And automatically, if you know anything about, let's say, serial killers, etc., usually there is some signs that show that they could turn into just murderers, killing people, etc., if they start messing with animals at an early age. For instance, if you have an individual as a young child that had, kind of a weird upbringing, and you see them abusing animals, etc., usually that could be a sign that the individual is going to be very messed up later on in life, maybe not necessarily becoming a serial killer, but something really messed up in the grand scheme of things, but usually it's a warning sign. And when you see the character Gabriel messing with the mantis's head like he did, kind of looking like he was going to crush it, it was very obvious by the way the animation was done. It really gave us a sign to what truly he was, what monster really was lurking underneath that human skin that he had. And then, as the episode progresses, we see the Dark Knight girl, the girl that was introduced in the previous episode, which I'm really just shocked and a little bit upset by the way the Dark Knights were handled within this episode. And I'll get into that in a second, but basically, a new character that was introduced in the previous episode tries to stop Gabriel from taking command of the entire army, for instance, everybody in the Dark Territory, and, just wants to end him, make sure that there could be peace. And, I'll get into discussions the reason why the person did it, etc., but the point is, she tried to assassinate the man. He obviously didn't die. He grabbed her, he killed her, and in her final moments before she truly died and her light crashed and burned, her very essence kind of went right into him, and he had some feedback to where he had some of her memories come inside of him, and it's kind of like he literally had her soul come into his very being, like he ate her very soul, and it gave him kind of a high in a way, that you could kind of see by the way he reacts. He got a euphoria, he got a high from just what he did, and it's sick, it's disgusting, and when you see actually what he says after that, that's when we really get to see how messed up he is, for how long he has been messed up. The childhood friend that he had, we saw in the flashback, he killed, which is... that's... wow. This gets into what I talked about at the beginning of this video, the dark elements that I never thought I would see from Sword Art Online. I mean, let alone from normal shows. It's not something you would normally see, especially to such a degree of what Gabriel did to his childhood friend at such an age. That was not something I expected, especially visually seeing it without any censorship. That's what really caught me by surprise. It's not even the fact of he did it, it's the fact that there was no censorship and the way it was just shown to the audience. It honestly is just unnerving in a way, just to see that. It really does set a tone for where this arc of SAO is going, and how different it really is from the previous arcs of SAO. I mean, we have had death here and there throughout the stories of Sword Art Online. I mean, with the whole Aincrad stuff in the first, arc, we've had, many people basically, if they died in the game, they died in real life. We've had the whole, death gun situation. There has definitely been death within the series. It's not something that's relatively new, but visually showing everything on screen to such a degree is not something that we are used to. So that's the crazy part about it. So I have to hand it to the animators of this episode for not really trying to shy away and hide the gruesome details that was probably within the light novel. There probably is some censorship that I'm unaware of, but overall, just to get what we did is still quite the shock. So yeah, in that moment, it pretty much established Gabriel as a psychopath. He is someone that wants to know where the human soul is, how it ticks, how it works, etc. And so he likes that feeling of when he ends a life, basically. So he gets that high from it, he's excited, and that just pretty much summarizes his entire character. He's truly disturbed. He's a really disturbed character. There's no question about that. There's no questioning, how disturbed he really is to do what he did within, the episode. But to take it one step further, though, let's kind of talk about what he said, his objective. It seems like his objective might not be to grab Alice and get outside of the VR experience. It seems like he might actually try to end her as well, because there is a connection with his childhood friend and her, because the names are very similar, they kind of look similar in a lot of different ways, so it kind of does look like it's possible, Gabriel could go after Alice and not a way to follow the mission, but for his own desire, basically. So that's probably what's going to be the main threat within the story. But okay, let's get into the Dark Knights. So the Dark Knights that were introduced in the previous episode, I was a big fan. They had really nice designs, even if it's simplistic to some degree. They were cool looking characters, they had good voice actors, and the way they were presented really added some form of, conflict within the Dark Territory. It gave more personality to the Dark Territory citizens that we really haven't seen before, because everything that was established up to this very point basically stated that everybody in the Dark Territory was just monstrous beings that didn't care about life, etc. They were heartless. That's what we were told. But then we see the last episode with the two Dark Knights introduced, we find out that they actually are good individuals over there, and they definitely do want what's best for both sides. They don't want to, destroy everybody. So it really added a level of humanity. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And so after that introduction, we have it to where, you know, the dude, the Dark Knight guy, he's like, why don't you marry me? And so there was kind of like a whole love confession in the previous episode. I'm like, whoa, we're getting a love confession. We're getting all this development right here. I'm like, okay, this is kind of crazy. And then this episode happens, and they die. Now, granted, the way they died makes sense, because they're not going to be able to stop an opponent kind of like Gabriel, especially that's a part of a god account, basically a demon king. But it doesn't change the fact, though, that after everything that happened in the previous episode and all that kind of build-up, to kind of throw away those characters just seems kind of like a waste, honestly. It really does. There probably is more characterization and development within the light novels, but even then, though, just to throw those characters away just feels like such a waste, because from everything that was presented thus far from, you know, the anime, is that those two Dark Knights are the only individuals within the Dark Territory that are actually good individuals, that do want what's best for everyone. And so with them being killed, it kind of makes the entire enemy just mindless and unredeemable. Which, don't get me wrong, we need a villain, we need an enemy, but it's not always good just to make a common enemy that's just basic, you know, and all that, and just like, oh, they're evil to be evil, they're villains that just want to raid us, you know, have no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And having, let's say, the Dark Knights being a part of that faction, and even if they, you know, never turn to the side of good, seeing their conflict, their motivation, etc., would really be cool for the story. So to just throw away those characters seems like such a waste for what was set up in the previous episode. But most likely there could potentially be other individuals within the Dark Territory that could pop up to help out Kirito and all of them, but we'll see where the story goes. But okay. Anyways, let's talk about one of the other situations that I didn't get to talk about because I didn't review last week's episode. So, how Gabriel and his boy got inside of the VR experience Underworld is by using god accounts. Now, I want to talk about that entire scene, okay? So, apparently, you know, Asuna, she's going to be going inside of the game to try to retrieve Alice, fix Kirito, etc. That was kind of common sense. We probably all expected something like that to happen. So, she's going to be going into the game, and she got to select from different accounts and all that, god accounts, etc., to be able to select, to be able to go into the world and help out Alice and everybody else against the Dark Territory. And as they're selecting, Asuna's going to select her class, and then all of a sudden you have it to where an individual asks, like, okay, so why doesn't, let's say, the other group, you know, Gabriel and all them, why don't they do the exact same thing we're doing? And you see the scientist, like the guy right at the table, is like, oh, no, they can't do that, we have them all password locked, and then you just see him think in deep thought, he's like, huh, oh, nah, it's nothing. And obviously, it's nothing. It is something, because they have the Dark Territory god accounts. I'm just like, how do you forget something like that? You don't forget something that crucial. That's bad. That's really bad. But here's the thing. What I was told from light novel readers is actually that did not even happen. For instance, when it came to what happened within the light novel, the dude at the desk that was, you know, looking at the god accounts to give Asuna, he didn't even recall about, you know, the Dark Territory god accounts. Like, you know, in the light novel, it states that he had a eerie feeling, something that was in the back of his mind that, you know, he couldn't think about, but something was definitely wrong. He just couldn't, you know, figure out what it was. And so he knew that there was something amiss, he just didn't know what it was, and so that's a little bit more understandable than the man literally like, I wonder, he's like, nothing, no, don't worry about it, it's nothing, when it's clear from the way the anime showed it, that he did remember, you know, the Dark Territory god accounts. So, it just, yeah, it really comes down to how they're shown, if they're actually good or not, and if it's done right and people can really, you know, call it, you know, like, really, that's bad writing or not bad writing. But, in this regard, I think the anime failed in conveying those emotions. So, yeah, I do really think that the only reason why the Dark Knight failed as well to take down Gabriel at the end was most likely because Gabriel, since it was stated by the Dark Knight that he's technically dead but alive, it most likely has something to do with the fact that he's technically there in the world, but his body is really on the outside as well, so you can't really kill someone that's not really attached to the game world necessarily, so he couldn't fundamentally completely kill him. But even if, let's say, he still could, the reason why he might not have been able to go even further than this is probably because of Gabriel being so messed up in the head and being so disconnected from from humanity and the soul, etc., you know, it allowed it to where he was able to survive and not get killed because he was just literally an abyss. He was just a dark pit within his soul, and that really cannot be killed because technically it's already dead to begin with. It's empty. So, it's one of those two. But I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you got this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.